It's a music festival. But there's so much else that she is. So I just want to give you a little bit more. She's a doctorate of comparative literature. She was named Gambit Weekly's 40 Under 40 and New Orleans Magazine People to Watch. She gave a TED Talk titled Becoming Part of the Story. She's an advocate for literacy, and she has been working, let's see, okay, yeah, I see it here because I read about this. She's founded a book club inside the Orleans Parish Jail. So she is actively involved in spreading literacy and advocating for it. And she also says that she's a very big super fan of Prince. And she also has C Leigh's book by her bedside as a Bible. So let me welcome Dr. Megan Holt.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for the invitation to be here tonight. And yeah, when I'm not doing community literacy stuff, I spend an absurd amount of time thinking about and listening to and missing Prince. And you can only spend an absurd amount of time thinking about Prince before you run up on C Liegh McInnis. I'll give him a proper intro and then we're going to get into it. C Liegh McInnis is a poet, short story writer, Prince scholar, 2025 finalist for the Mississippi Poet Laureate, co-founder of the Jackson State Creative Writing Program, former editor/publisher of Black Magnolias, and author of 8 books, 4 collections of poetry, 1 collection of short fiction, 1 work of literary criticism, which is this, and 1 co-authored work. Additionally, he has been published in periodicals and anthologies and has spoken on Prince in a wide range of capacities, including, I think, most recently, the Prince Symposium put on by D'Angelo Duff.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. And he wrote this book that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to ask him some stuff about the book. I'm going to ask him about things he said in the book. I might ask him a couple things that he left out of the book, and we'll just see where this conversation goes.
So before we get started, I need y'all to do me and Sister Rachel a big favor. Dr. Holt stepped in at the very last second. So can y'all give her a hand for stepping in at the very last second? And we appreciate that. Because that just lets you know the kind of community servant that she is, and she's always there for community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. There are very few people for whom I'd step in at 72 hours notice, but C Liegh and Prince are 2 of them. So I want to talk to you about the book. I'm going to start at the very beginning, which is the cover, and the title. All right, so for those of you who don't have the book in front of you, it's over there. You should get it from Past Christian Books. The lyrics of Prince Rogers Nelson / love symbol, a literary look at a creative musical poet, philosopher, and storyteller. Okay, so it's 600 plus pages without the bibliography. And I feel like each of the things you wrote in the title could be a different book, right? A literary look at a creative could be a book. A literary look at a musical poet could be a book. A literary look at a philosopher could be a book. A literary look at a storyteller could be a book. So why did you feel the need to put all the things into one very massive text?
So first, I wasn't planning on writing a master text. What happened was my junior year, I attended Jackson State University. I'm a second generation Jackson State University graduate. There you go. The D I love. There's always one of us somewhere, right? So when I was a junior, my American lit teachers asked me, I want you guys to talk about the poet or the artist that has most influenced you. Now, as a poet, I'm also a poet and a short story writer. So I'm a child of the Black arts movement, right? So Amiri Baraka, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni, Lucille Clifton, right? But I had to be honest and say, while all of those, and also I have to give shout out to Richard Wright and Margaret Walker Alexander, right? So I've always shout out Richard Wright and Margaret Walker Alexander, but Prince is the artist that Prince didn't make me want to be a writer, but Prince made me want to be an artist. And so for my presentation, I wrote my presentation on Prince, got a little snippets of music. The class loved it. The teacher loved it. And so I knew that in going to grad school, I was going to write my thesis about Prince. And you will know this, and some of y'all who've ever had to write a thesis will know this. When it got time for me, when I got finished with my classes and I got ready for my thesis, I walked into my thesis advisor's office with 100 pages and 150 sources.
Okay.
That's a thesis advisor's dream, right? And they denied that topic. And you have to understand that Jackson State is an HBCU. We are currently fighting against the College Board, which is IHL. They are always clamping down on us. And you have to also understand that in, what was that, 90? I got my master's in 94, so that would be 93. You have to understand that my master's thesis was essentially for African-American women all over the age of 50. So, as one told me later, there was no way they were going to approve a thesis on Prince to be sent to this all-white college board that's always looking for reasons to reduce the funding to Jackson State. Now, you can deal with that a lot of different ways. But because I am a second-generation Jackson State graduate, because I understand the struggle of HBCUs, particularly the struggle of HBCUs in this state, I get it. I understand it. And I'm glad that we've changed that, and now students are getting to write their theses on any number of things. Yeah. And so what I simply did was, I said, I'll write my thesis on something else, but I'm going to write this book because it's going to be my artistic manifesto. Okay. It's going to be both a tribute to the person who made me want to be an artist, and also a way of me working through what I want to be as an artist. Now, as you know, and as those of us know who write, one of the major things about writing is you want to anticipate and answer all the questions, right? You want to go in with your research questions, but you don't want to leave your book with other people saying, hey, I like this, but I had these questions. So I wanted to be very thorough in what I was doing. However, and this is on everything I love, I did not know the book was that big until the first time I hit print on the draft. And I ran out of paper. One of my favorite lines, it's not one of my favorite movies, not one of my favorite movies, but one of my favorite lines is from Jaws. We gonna need a bigger boat. After I ran out of paper, I was like, I'm gonna need more paper, right? So I did not set out, I didn't set out to write a 600-page book, but I wanted to make sure that I was as thorough as possible, and then I'll end on this. When I started writing my book in the mid-90s, hip-hop had become the dominant form, right? It was the dominant black form, and then by the time you get to 95, 96, it's the dominant international form. And Prince was being, at that time, marginalized, pushed to the side. And so I also wanted to remind people, this dude's a genius. And I wanted to remind people that there's a lot of people who come after him. So for instance, a lot of people got on the bus at Purple Rain. I got on before Purple Rain. So I was a Prince fan before Purple Rain. The 1999 album, and this is by Roger Lynn, the man who invented the drum machine. Roger Lynn essentially said that Prince is one of the most important people to his success. Because what Prince does with the drum machine on 1999 is what essentially, it doesn't give birth to hip hop, but it gives hip hop the tool to become an international force. That's just one of the ways in which Prince's artistry is continuing to impact people. And I wanted to make sure I covered that in the book. That's it.
Cool. And I'm so glad you touched on that, because I feel like your book does something that you say Prince does in the book, in one of the later editions, because you weren't talking about emancipation yet in the 1995 edition. You were talking about it, I think, in the 2007 edition?
Yep, in 2007, okay. There you go.
So Having been in academia, I love academia for the fact that it's thought work. There is no other profession in which you get paid to think all day. But these brilliant thinkers sometimes have a very narrow definition of success. And I think the reason that they didn't select a 100-page thesis with 150 sources is because they have a really narrow definition of what success looks like, what an academic topic looks like. And you say the same thing about the Emancipation album. You say that was considered a failure by sort of mainstream standards, even though he made $50 million that year.
I would love to fail making $50 million.
Right?
I don't know about y'all.
So can you talk about how his sort of concept of success sort of defied that mainstream definition?
So, as we all know, Prince was fighting against the system from day one. He was particularly fighting against the system of what a black artist could be, right? By the time Prince's first album comes out in '78, rock and roll is considered a white art form, right? Little Richard and Chuck Berry both have their first hits in 1953, a month apart. Elvis's first hit isn't until 2 years later in '55. From '53 to '78, rock and roll had become a complete white art form. So here comes Prince with his first album, For You, that has actual rock songs on it. Go listen to I'm Yours from his first album, and then go listen to Bambi from his second album. Those are just straight out shredding rock songs. But because he was a black artist who would only be played on black radio through his first 4 albums, he was constantly fighting, trying to reclaim a music that came from his culture, and also fighting to expand, right, what black artistry could be. So then he goes through that, he breaks away from the company, he gets his freedom. Emancipation then becomes the first album of his freedom. But you have to understand, the magazines and the record companies are in cahoots with each other. Sometimes that works for good, most times it works for bad, right? If we talk about MTV, I'll show you the one time it worked for good, but mostly it works for bad. So if Prince, who's one of the biggest artists of his time, breaks away from Warner Brothers, and he actually had a hit before he broke away from Warner Brothers, we don't talk about it enough, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World. So when Prince had slave written on his face, and he was fighting against Warner Brothers because he wanted to release more music and he wanted to own his masters. It was both of those. It was, I want to release more music and I want to own my masters. And Warner Brothers decided, we gonna teach him a lesson. We gonna let you release that little Most Beautiful Girl in the World because we know it's gonna flop. And by himself, but here's what's important. He got together with a brother named Al Bell. Y'all may not know the name Al Bell, but you know Stax, right? Al Bell was one of the CEOs at Stax, right? The Memphis Sound. Prince gets with Al Bell, and together, by themselves, they promote The Most Beautiful Girl in the World to become a #1 hit for Prince, right? So Prince now knows I can do this by myself. And Warner Brothers is like, oh hell, we done messed up. So he gets away from them. He puts out Emancipation. Emancipation goes platinum, yet all the magazines say it's a failed album because it didn't go to #1. So my question to everybody is, would you rather have an album that goes to #1, or would you rather have an album that goes platinum? Would you rather have an album and a tour that makes you $50 million in 1 year, or would you rather be patted on the back by the magazine people? And so what you have to understand is that the last thing that Warner Brothers or any of the big conglomerates want is for somebody like Prince to be able to have a hit by himself, to have a hit. Because if he can, the question then becomes, why do I need you? And I will end that with this. And I like Clive Davis. I think Prince actually liked Clive Davis, but he gave Clive Davis a lot of holy hell. For the Rave album, Prince gave Clive the Rave album. He did a one-off. By that time, he started doing distribution deals where he could keep his art, but he was signed to distribution deals you can distribute. So he gives Clive Davis the album, and Clive Davis looks at the album, he listens to it. You know, Clive Davis is a hit maker. Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston. Clive is all about the hits. And Clive says to Prince, well, Prince, this album doesn't have a single that I can sell. And Prince looks at Clive and said, damn, Clive, let me get this straight. I got to write the songs. I got to play on the songs. I got to record the songs, I got to make the album. What exactly do you do?
Yeah.
And that was the point why Rolling Stone and Warner Brothers needed Emancipation to be a flop. Because what's happening now, where artists don't need labels, right? We can talk about the good and bad of it, but essentially artists don't need labels anymore. Well, Prince was ahead of the game. Prince, in the 90s, some of us are gonna be old enough to remember this, when he left Warner Brothers, he was telemarketing albums, right? He was selling albums via telephone, right? 1-800-NEW-FUNK, you know, so he named the album after the phone number, which is just ingenious to me, right? What's the name of the album? 1-800-NEW-FUNK. Call and get your copy now, right? Prince was the first major artist to get on YouTube.
Yep.
And then became the first major artist to get off YouTube because he understood the problem that streaming was gonna have, and that today artists make 1 penny per stream. So all of that is to say, the reason it was called a flop, and I hate to use this terminology, but you know, we remember Prince walking around with slave on his face. We don't want the slave to lead a plantation and be successful. And Prince left the plantation and was successful, and they needed to keep that a secret.
Yes, indeed. So when I was trying to think about how I could use, my doctorate to sort of go out and do something different, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, Megan, don't ever go out and be somebody's gold-plated janitor.
Oh, there you go.
And I got that piece of advice from someone who is a friend and mentor to us both, and that's Dr. Jerry Ward.
Oh, yes, indeed. Rest in heaven, Dr. Ward.
Amen.
Yes.
And I wanted to speak his name.
I just want to say, one of the greatest literary minds the state of Mississippi ever created, Tougaloo College graduate, one of the most powerful literary poets and theorists ever created. Thank you for that love. Dr. Jerry Ward, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just wanted to speak his name in this space,
Yes.
But also on page 533, you say his name. And you quote him and say that he asserts that it is the well-crafted poet who can take the familiar and make it unfamiliar so that we can see it in a new and better and clearer light. And this is what Love Symbol is doing in all these songs. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
So, and that's a riff on a Wordsworth quote, right? So Jerry Ward is riffing on William Wordsworth, right? The job of the poet is to make the familiar unfamiliar. I'll get the example I use is, I talk a lot about what I call Prince's sexual metaphor inversion, right? So the question is, what is a sexual metaphor inversion? And so let's start with something we all know. Chuck Berry was a genius because it was the 50s and you couldn't say a lot of stuff on the radio, so you had to be slick, right? Some of us are old enough to know that 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you had to be really slick if you wanted to have any kind of sexual innuendo or that. So you take a song like Lucille. On the surface, it's about a car, but we all know Lucille is a woman, right? Right? Lucille, and Maybelline, why can't you be true? You're going back to doing the things you used to do. And he's talking about the car keeps breaking down and not acting right, but we know Maybelline is the woman that ain't acting right. So that's a strict metaphor, right? Prince does the opposite. Prince, rather than using an object as a metaphor for sex, Prince uses sex as a metaphor to study human neurosis. So on the surface, you think he's talking about sex. So he's pulling you in. And then once you get there and you really read the lyrics, you go, oh, this isn't about sexual titillation at all. And I'll give you an example. Rolling Stone had a list, because Rolling Stone loved lists and everybody loved lists. And I think it was either the top 50 or the top 100, the horniest songs of all time, right? And of course I went like, yes, this is a list I want to read. All right, so some of my students in here, I got to be calm, right? So Little Red Corvette voted the #1 horniest song of all time because of the imagery, but also because they don't understand the imagery. Little Red Corvette is actually a song about the hypocritical male ego. Heterosexual males, I'm one of them, don't know most times if we want to sex a woman or save her. And because we don't know whether or not we want to save or sex her, we are confused, and we often confuse the relationship. So if you listen to Little Red Corvette, it's in 3 stages. The first 2/3, right? The first 2 stages is this male protagonist telling this female, hey, you need to slow down. You out there too fast. You're gonna run your body down. Physically, you killing yourself. This means emotionally and spiritually, you're gonna kill yourself. I love the line that says, I guess I should have known by the way you parked your car sideways, it wouldn't last. Like, homegirl ain't even pulling up in the driveway, right? She's the king of hit it and quit it, right? And that's also a different way. Like, the woman is rarely the hit it and quit it in the song. So Prince is giving us that, right? And you really think this guy is concerned about her physical and emotional and psychological well-being until we get to the 3rd stage. And we find that he only wants her to slow down so he can be the driver. So is he actually interested in saving her, or is it he's intimidated by her sexual liberation? Is it that as a male who's used to controlling and possessing women, that he feels it's his job to tame her? And the hypocrisy in that is that for a lot of men, taming women is saving them because we're so messed up with our own toxicity, right? And so that's the way Prince would take something that we knew, flip it, and before you know it, you had a whole nother discussion. And what I love is later in his career, he wrote a song called What's My Name? And he said, you wouldn't have drank my coffee if I wouldn't have given you cream. Right? So Prince is giving you all this tantalizing stuff, right? He's giving you this fashion and this makeup and his butt is out and all these things. And you think you going to the party for one thing, then you get there, sexy MF, right? It's a song where he's yelling MF, right? Through the whole song. Yet the very first line, in a word or two, is you I want to do. No, not the body, your mind, you fool. The whole song is that what makes a woman really sexy is a woman who knows herself internally. And the older you get, you realize that the sexiest women you meet are the most together women that you meet. And I, like lots of heterosexual males, had to learn it the hard way, but I'm glad to say that I finally learned it enough that when my future wife came into my life, I was like, oh, that's what sexy is. And I've been with the same woman since 1991 because she's a sexy MF, not because of her face and the body. Oh, don't get it twisted. She was fine now. I want to be clear. But other than being physically, she reminded me intellectually of my mother and my aunt and all of the beautiful, strong women in my community who made my community better. And I would like to credit Prince for planting those seeds early in my life to know what kind of woman who wished to look, along with my father, who's a pretty deep cat on that too. All right, so that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Ward, for inspiring that answer.
There we go.
So in addition to Dr. Ward, one of the people you name check is Amiri Baraka, and you name check him a lot in this text, specifically through the concept of the changing same.
Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit about, number one, for those of us who aren't familiar, what the changing same is and how it applies to Prince's lyrics?
So the changing same, and I'm gonna go at this kind of in a very general way. I must admit, and I never thought this would happen. I actually became the old dude who hates young people's music. I never thought that music would be too loud. Like when I would hear older people like, that's too loud. No, it's not loud enough. What you mean? Can we get something that's above 10? Can we? So, because I wasn't able to recognize that just because a new generation does something differently doesn't mean it's not rooted in the same tradition. And so Baraka is essentially saying that Black art has always done two things, right? It is always uplifted and resisted. Uplifted and resisted. That's what our art has done on this landmass. It uplifts and resists. It uplifts and resists. And so the changing same is the way in which Black music and Black art, to extend it out, but particularly talking about music, that the way in Black music continues to uplift and resist because we're always reacting to the new old ways of oppression. So it's not that the oppression is new, it's just that the oppressor finds a new way to implement it. And when the oppressor finds a way to implement it, we have to find a new way to uplift and resist. Prince then comes along in that tradition, the tradition of James Brown, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Muddy Waters, B.B. King. For those of y'all don't know, there's some great bootlegs that during the Purple Rain tour, Prince used to love to riff on B.B. King, giving me some outside help I don't need. Man, when I discovered that as a person, I've been seeing B.B. King live since I was 6 years old, right? And so when I found that bootleg, that my favorite guitar player is riffing off my other favorite guitar player, I was in guitar heaven.
Wow.
And so that's the change in saying that Prince is an amalgamation of the Sly Stones and the Jimi Hendrix and the Larry Grahams and the Earth, Wind and Fire, the Parliament Funkadelic, right? And what Prince was able to do, not just musically, not just sonically, but also lyrically, to use his work to respond to the new oppressions, right? That's why you get a song like Dear Mr. Man, right? That's why you get a song off the Dirty Mind album, Party. Prince wrote an anti-war song in 1980 when there wasn't no real war happening. Now, we know that governments are always at war, so let's be clear about that. But like that, usually when you have an anti-war song, there's a war to which we could connect it. Prince writes Party Up in response to Reagan being elected, understanding that Reagan is talking about certain policies about how they're going to treat certain kind of countries of color. And Prince is saying, yeah, but the problem with your war is it's always the poor who die. Right. Now I have to connect this because the reason that King came out against the Vietnam War, and I want to say this clearly, it wasn't that more black men were being drafted, but more black men were being drafted disproportionately. So you think about Prince, who was born in 58. You think about Prince and all the people in his age, how many men that you saw and women come back from Vietnam, right, on drugs, depressed, right, traumatized, because they were fighting a war that they couldn't win, fighting a war that nobody was giving them any help and support for. And so when Prince is penning Party Up, he's writing about all those uncles and cousins and black men who were coming back to their community, strung out, depressed, hopeless, saying that, look, the line I love, he says that you get mashed potatoes and steak, we get ice cream, no cake, all lies, no truth. Is it fair to kill the youth? It's the poor people, right? The ice cream, no cake. We don't even get two things that go together, and we have to go. And I'm somebody who, I was actually in the National Guard, which surprised my father because my father was arrested by the National Guard and detained by the National Guard in the movement. But most people don't know that unlike the Reserve, the National Guard was specifically created so that rich people could put their children in service so they could avoid battle and war. Now, that, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean that people in the Guard haven't died for this country. I want to be real clear about that, right? People from the Guard and Reserve have died. But if you understand what Prince is saying in Party Up about the haves and the have-nots, and that is the people on the lower totem. And so that's that change in saying. So just like Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, you have to read Prince's Dirty Mind and Controversy in the same way that you're reading Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. You have to read Prince's Dirty Mind and Controversy in the same way that you're reading Gil Scott-Heron's work. And in that way, Prince becomes the change in saying, continuing the tradition, continuing the message, and then inspiring those who come after him, like the Janelle Monáes and the D'Angelos and all those other artists who come after him, the Outkast, right? The Alicia Keys, who are not just talented sonically, but are also using their lyrics to talk about what's happening now. That's it.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's a couple places I could go from that. And I think I want to go to the concept of uplifting and resisting, because what that reminded me of when you were talking about it is in your book, you talk about this pendulum of Prince where he'll have this commercial success, and just when you think he's going to make Purple Rain 2, he makes Around the World in a Day. And then
surprised the hell out of everybody. Like, what is this?
Right? So he has this sort of pendulum, like commercial success, artistic statement, commercial success, artistic statement, and it goes like the sort of back and forth. Can you talk a little bit about what that was and why he was always like resisting making the Purple Rain 2, making the Diamonds and Pearls 2, and really staying true to that Prince-ness?
Prince was very aware, and by the way, this is a term I just learned. So I wish I knew this term when I was writing my book. Prince was very aware of something that's called the golden handcuffs. Yeah. Right? And golden handcuffs are a little something different than the golden parachute, right? So golden handcuffs is something for which you have become so successful that you are chained to it like an albatross for the rest of your life. And Prince never wanted to be the guy 20, 30, 40 years into his career singing the same songs that he wrote 20, 30, 40 years ago. That just wasn't his DNA. Prince was because Prince, if you look at the Controversy album has a bunch of newspapers on it, and those newspapers is called Controversy Daily. Prince looked at albums like newspapers. He's responding specifically and immediately to what's happening. That's why he wanted his albums to come out every year. But of course, for the machine, the money-making machine, that's not what Warner Brothers wanted. They wanted, hey man, we want you to drop this album, drop some videos, drop some singles, tour. We want to milk this album for 2 years. We're gonna make a comparison. And I promise I'm gonna come back to answering that question. I wasn't one of them people in the 80s who had to choose between Michael Jackson and Prince, though there were a lot. Like there were a lot of people, you were either, somebody got a brick thrown at them in my school for being on the wrong side. I ain't gonna say who, and I ain't gonna say who threw the brick. Let's move on, right? But I always said, so I was a Prince fanatic, I was a Michael Jackson fan. I saw Michael Jackson, I saw him live in the Jacksons, I saw him live on his own. I always said though, that Prince fanatics were spoiled, because for the most part, we got a new Prince album every year. Mm-hmm. Mike fans had to wait 2-3 years, and I just couldn't imagine what that was like, having to wait. So now coming specifically to your question. Prince, the second album, Prince goes into it purposely writing hits, because the first album, For You, it was what he wanted to do, it was what he wanted to make, but it didn't sell. And he had used most of the budget on that album. So Prince says, I needed a hit because I was in a 3-album deal. I needed a hit because 1, I was out of money, and 2, these people were looking at me funny. So he comes out with I Want to Be Your Lover and Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad. They become top 10 hits on the Black R&B. I'm mentioning that for a reason if we get to it, why it's important to say that they were top 10 hits on the Black R&B. Now I got the industry off my back, and then he makes Dirty Mind. Now he can make another artistic statement. And so Prince always understood financially, sometimes, you gotta make money to fund your vision. In fact, Prince used to love to say, he would say, money won't bring you happiness, but it'll pay for the search, right? And so that's why he was doing that, because one, he never wanted to be, he said that, wouldn't it be cool if your favorite artist had 20 albums and you laid all 20 of those albums out and they all sounded differently? When people were criticizing Around the World in a Day, I love, this is my second, not my first favorite quote, but this is my second favorite quote from him in this particular interview. He says, do you know how easy it would have been for me to take the guitar solo in Let's Go Crazy, put it in a different key, and open Around the World in a Day with that? Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, what an honest and bold thing to say. Mm-hmm. He's saying, and so I go back to talking about that second album. He said, the second album got me hits, but those ain't the kind of fans you want. Mm-hmm. Fans who come to you because you got hits are fans who will stifle you. They won't come check you out when you're doing something different, when you're doing something new. And he wanted to cultivate a fan base, a following that would give him the freedom. So that's why I always say, and I'm not knocking people, those of us who were fans before, I saw Prince live 3 times before Purple Rain. Those of us who were fans before Purple Rain have a slightly different relationship with Purple Rain than people who got him. That doesn't mean we're better fans, that doesn't mean we're bigger fans, But by the time you get to Purple Rain, this dude is already a genius for us. 1999, when people try to imitate Prince's sound, or they try to sound like the 80s, what's always funny to me is they never sound like Purple Rain. Because the sound of the 80s is 1999. And by the way, we need to correct something in the timeline. Prince wasn't battling Michael Jackson for supremacy with Purple Rain. 1999 was released a month before Thriller.
Yes.
So it was Thriller. So what happened in real time was, Mike, yes, he became the king of pop. There's no denying that. But everybody's saying, but this freaky dude over here, this sleazy dude over here, this the dude that's bringing the funk. This the dude, because Mike was Disney, Mike was safe, like your parents and your grandparents, but if you want this raw, uncut funk, you want this real rock and roll. And so Prince basically decided, I'm gonna say something, and I'll close on this or this. And this is not a knock. I wanna be clear, I'm not knocking Michael Jackson, because let's be clear, it ain't easy to make hits, right? I wanna be real clear about that. Mike came from the Motown factory.
Right.
When you come from the Motown factory, your job is to make hits. So if you look at the trajectory of their career, Thriller being the biggest album for Mike, Purple Rain being the biggest album for Prince. Mike spent the remainder of his career trying to create Thriller 2.0, trying to top Thriller 2.0. Prince spent the remainder of his career using his success with Purple Rain to expand what it means to be a black artist, to expand what it means, to challenge what does it mean to be successful, to challenge the definition of a hit song. So Prince understood, I need money, but I don't need money for new cars, I don't need money for chains, I don't need money for jewelry. Every time Prince had a big album with lots of money, he was always he built Paisley Park. He didn't go get a lot of jewelry and all that, he built a studio. So that was Prince's trajectory, because the album that was a commercial success would be the album that would give him the time to then explore himself artistically. That's it.
Okay, so I'm so glad you just mentioned Paisley Park. I'm gonna go somewhere completely different that I hadn't planned on going. So when I listen to Paisley Park, the song on Around the World in a Day, I think of this sort of utopic place that you've got to work to get to, right?
Yep.
And for me, that puts Prince in the tradition of Mavis Staples' Come Go With Me.
Yep.
It puts Prince in the tradition of George Clinton singing Can You Get to That on the Maggot Brain album. This thing that you've got to work for, but once you get there, it's better than anything you could have ever imagined. And so I'm wondering if you can sort of talk about Prince in that trajectory.
I'm glad you said the word work.
You got to work for it.
Because that's what's important. So I have, a couple of years ago, I wrote an article about the staple singers in Prince. And it's called The Art of Black Liberation Theology, right? And so for those of you who don't know, Black Liberation Theology, that essentially is what Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were doing. Both of them were ministers. And so Black Liberation Theology is a Christian ideology where they take the Bible and they apply it not just to getting into heaven, but they apply it to social political conditions, right? That, as we know, faith without works is dead. And so what does Yeshua say? He says that, look, if your brother tells you that he's hungry and you say, I'm gonna pray for you, I don't believe you have faith. Because faith would be you would feed your brother, right? And so that's Black Liberation Theology. The great thing about what you said about work, so before we get to Paisley Park, on the Dirty Mind album, Prince has a song called Uptown. And Uptown is about utopia. It's about black, white, Puerto Rican, everybody just a freaking, right? He said, our clothes, our hair, nobody cares. It's just about being there. Uptown paints the picture of the world that Prince was. You have to remember, Prince grew up in a Minneapolis, Minnesota that was less than 3% black. Minnesota, Minnesota is the only place I ever had to be in. I had to get up every morning and go look for black people, right? It is the second whitest place I've ever been other than Utah. I got a great Utah story, but we can't tell it here. Then we'll talk because we're talking about Prince tonight. But, so you have to understand that for Prince, Minneapolis was the last market to play Prince's music. Now, I'm not knocking them because they have accepted their son and they're doing all these things, but that's how white Minneapolis was. Detroit played Prince's music before his hometown. So we get the utopia in Uptown. Then when we get to the Controversy album, he gives us the song Sexuality. Sexuality says to get to Uptown, we got to work for it.
Yeah.
And he's particularly talking about grassroots organizing, right? He's screaming, he said, this is your life. This is your world. He said, we need a better world. We need a better race. And he says, there's a chance that reproduction of the new breed, leaders stand up and organize. I want to be in the new breed, leaders stand up and organize. And I love a line he says, mamas, don't let your babies watch television until they know how to read, or else all they'll know how to do is cuss, fight, and breed. No child is bad from the beginning. They only imitate the atmosphere. He's saying, look, we can have this utopia, but it ain't gonna just come to us. You got to be willing to do the work. And then many years later, he still had that same theme on his album, The Rainbow Children. He has a song called The Work Part 1.
Yes.
And he says that it's for those willing to do the work. He said, every time I watch the other people's news, telling me a misguided notion of myself, right? He's saying, look, all this propaganda around that's telling me what's wrong with my community when I know what's wrong with my community, and it's not what this propaganda news is telling me, but the people in the community got to be willing to do the work. And so that was a mantra of Prince that, yes, I'm going to give you the picture of the utopia in Paisley Park. I'm going to give you the picture of the utopia in Uptown. But also on Around the World in a Day, he gives us Condition of the Heart, and he gives us Temptation. And Temptation and Condition of the Heart is about those individual internal struggles that we have to be willing to do. And then we get to the Emancipation album, and there's a song that's titled The Love We Make. Yep. It has one of my favorite lines for it. He says, the only love there is the love we make. The only love there is the love we make. So if we don't make no love, ain't gonna be no love. So Prince didn't just give us the fairy tale, he also tried to give us the blueprint. And he did that not only in his lyrics, he did that in his charitable giving, often giving money to people that nobody knew about until the day he died. He funded schools. He always funded schools. He funded educational programs because he understood that we can't dream our way. Nothing comes to sleepers but dreams. Nothing comes from talkers but sound. We can talk all we want to, but the world still goes around and round. That's a song, Round and Round, that he wrote for Tevin Campbell that appears on the Graffiti Bridge album. So every step of the way, Prince was telling us we got to do the work to make the world we want to see exist. That's it.
Yes, and riffing off that, like going back to George Clinton, so many times in the book you talk about Prince's work in the context of George Clinton's line, free your mind and your ass will follow. But on page 256, you invert that. You talk about how so many of his songs talk about addressing the bodily before you can address the spiritual, right? It's almost free your ass and your mind will follow. So can you talk a little bit about that inversion, that you gotta take care of the physical before you can get to the spiritual?
So Sexuality is a really interesting song, right? So Controversy comes out in 1981. Have to really understand what's really happening in 1981. We had the 60s. The 70s was kind of like, hey, let's kind of, we still got the movement, but let's chill out a little bit, let's party a little bit. The 80s become the me decade, right? The 80s become the Wall Street. Who remembers the movie Wall Street with Gordon Gekko, right? And Gordon Gekko say, greed is good, right? So by the time we get to the early 80s, young people really think that the only thing that they have that they control are their bodies. So one of the lines in Sexuality is all I ever need. Sexuality, I'm gonna let my body be free. And so for Prince, part of knowing yourself, part of knowing your body, part of physical liberation is because that's the thing that you can control. And so Prince was very clear. He was never saying, I wanna focus solely on the spiritual, the metaphysical, and not on the physical. What I want to do is let people know, my favorite saying for Prince is, Prince understood that human beings were pie charts with many slices. The problem is that most people only think that there are 2 or 3 slices to their pie chart. How do we define ourselves? Somebody's spouse, somebody's parent, somebody's child, and an employee. That's it. And we all know as human beings, there's so much more to us than that. And Prince is saying that if we can explore ourselves sexually, and in doing that, exploring ourselves sexually, not just about sexual titillation, but going back to that, inverting that sexual metaphor, understanding why you like what you like. It's not enough to understand that I'm uncomfortable. What makes me uncomfortable? What is it about me that makes me uncomfortable about these things? So Prince was always starting in the body because the mind, the soul, and the spirit are housed in the body. And here's something I say in one of my poems. The mind, the body, and the spirit cannot flourish if it's in a decaying temple. And so Prince was always clear, you gotta take care of your body as well as taking care of your mind and your body and your spirit. And part of taking care of your body is understanding why your body reacts to things and reacts to people in the way that they do. And if you understand how and why your body reacts in a certain way, not so that your body can overpower your spirit and your mind, but that it can work together. And that's why Prince was always willing to root us in the physical, because we live in a physical world. We live in a tangible world. That's why in the story, Yeshua feeds the multitudes. People always talk about the miracle of feeding the 40,000. They never talk about what happened before. What happened is that people started getting up and milling around and going away. And so Peter turns to his boys, right, his homies, better known as disciples, right? He says, hey, what's going on? And I love that it was Peter. Peter was like, hey, yeah, you the way, the truth, and the light, but we hungry as hell, so I don't, you know. And Yeshua literally goes, right, go read, he goes, you know what? I keep forgetting that y'all don't know that your spirits are stronger than your body. So because of that, I'm gonna feed these people physically because I can't educate them spiritually if I don't feed them physically. So when they used to say the McInnises don't come to church, that's we feed, whatever your answer is. Feed more than the McInnises come to church, that's it.
It reminds me so much of Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yes.
right? Where you gotta take care of the physical before you can get to that spiritual plane.
That's it.
And it's really interesting that you talk about, you know, sort of the Jesus metaphors, the Christianity metaphors. One of the places that I think that is most prevalent is something you don't write about in your book, and that's one of the cover songs he does. So Prince was notorious for hardly ever doing covers until he did. So there's 3 on Emancipation alone. There's One of Us, like What If God Was One of Us. There's I Can't Make You Love Me. There's Betcha by Golly Wow. And then in other places, he covered Joni Mitchell's Case of You. And he also covered Crimson and Clover with a little bit of Wild Thing thrown in there by the Troggles. So I'm like, he did 5.5 covers?
Right.
Because I'm not sure if that Wild Thing counts as a cover in and of itself, so I call it 5.5.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about when Prince covered things and why?
So, wow, and it's cool, because I hope the brother's still here. This is going to get into a conversation I was having with somebody at the table. So the reason I didn't write about them was because he didn't write them. And so the book is about his lyrics, and so that's why I didn't include them. So to talk about Prince doing covers, we have to go back to talk about his father and the black musicians in Minneapolis. So again, Minneapolis, less than 3% black. If you were a black musician in Minneapolis, you were probably going to be playing for white people to make money. You can play in the hood, but you ain't gonna make much money. So if you're gonna be playing for white people to make money, it's Minneapolis, it's Scandinavian town. They're gonna have to learn polkas. They're gonna have to learn, right, all those types of things. So Prince grew up seeing his father and other black musicians play standard events, right, for the white population. And then after they would go and do that, they would come back to North Minneapolis where the black people live, and they would play all the black stuff. So in 1986, during the Hit and Run tour, which was the tour for the Parade album, Prince started playing what became known as the after show. And so where most other famous musicians would have after parties where people would sit around and drink and tell everybody how wonderful they are and all of that, Prince after shows were where he could go and play all the music of his youth and pay homage to his father and all those black musicians. So Prince had been doing covers at the after shows since 1986. And if you can get your hands on some of those great bootlegs, which I got my hands on a lot of those bootlegs, so much so that the very first time I met Prince at Page, we had talked on the phone, but then the very first time I met Prince, I walk in, he's holding my book in his hand, he goes, "Somebody got a lot of bootlegs." And I didn't know what to say, so I just said, first thing came to my mind, I was like, "Research purposes only, brother. Research purposes only." And he got a big kick out of that. So the covers was Prince's way of paying homage to that black tradition, to those people who made him. So if you listen to those bootleg covers, he's playing, so he would go, and so Prince would go play a regular show for 2 hours, right? Then he would tell his fans, "Hey, go find me a little hole in the wall club." And it didn't matter, Europe, America, he would go for, in Jackson, Mississippi, Prince played an after show in Jackson, Mississippi. I got to go. It was at a place called The Dock, 1996. I'm so hurt that The Dock isn't still open. And Prince played, it was on the Jam of the Year tour. He played 2 hours of Jam of the Year, goes out, and he plays at The Dock, and he plays 2.5 hours.
Wow.
At The Dock, and he plays rare cuts, like the deep cuts. So like he's not playing his hits. So he's playing songs that only Prince fans who know songs that wasn't coming out, and he's playing Sly and the Family Stone, James Brown, Smokey Robinson, Parliament Funkadelic, Aretha Franklin. So those covers. So if Prince covered you, it was because he thought your work was pretty important. So all those covers that you mentioned, particularly the 3 on Emancipation, and what he was doing on Emancipation, right? Those 3 albums are all 60 minutes apiece. What he was trying to do was to riff on Parliament Funkadelic. The aliens are gonna come to reclaim the pyramids, and the pyramids are these perfectly constructed things that have all the knowledge. So Emancipation is supposed to be these perfectly constructed discs that have knowledge for the mind, body, and soul. That's why it's 3 discs. Well, the covers are because if you don't know your history, that's the knowledge you're gonna need to transcend to this spiritual place that the aliens that George Clinton is singing about, right? Swing down, sweet chariot, stop and let me ride. Now we know swing down, sweet chariot, that's really code for the second coming, right? That's them taking that Southern Baptist Christian theology and flipping it into a liberation theology. This how we gonna get free. We gonna free our minds, and our ass will follow through our spiritual development. So those 3 covers, right? Think about those 3 covers, right? You have, if God was one of us, so that's the spiritual. Bet You by Golly Wow, that's the love, and
Can't Make You Love Me.
Can't Make You Love Me, perfect Prince cover.
It really is.
Because Prince turns her song into sexual salvation. It is Marvin Gaye's sexual healing raised to the point where Prince has always tried to seek salvation not in the male but in the female. So where Bonnie Raitt is singing a love jilted song, Prince is singing it more in the Al Green For the Good Times, right? Because people forget that Al Green song For the Good Times, it's about a relationship that's, he just, hey, just one more time for the good times, right? Let me get this connection. Let me get this spiritual. Now that's some pimping, let's be clear. He's just trying to hit it one more time. But it's also, he's trying, right, to so that there's this connection. So I Can't Make You Love, when you listen to Prince's vocal delivery and you listen to his ad-libs, Prince is trying to find a spiritual connection through the female, and he was always trying, if you listen to the lyrics of I Want to Be a Lover, if you listen to what's really happening underneath in Darling Nikki, if you listen to friend, lover, sister, mother, wife, the female has always represented life, and male toxicity has always represented death. And so if you watch a movie like Purple Rain, the kid begins in male toxicity, right? And he realizes that in order to escape from this blueprint that my father has created, I'm gonna have to let go of my masculinity while I define everything through my penis and embrace the female where I can find love and light. And that's why those covers are there.
Thank you so much. I've always wanted to ask him about the covers, and I've never gotten the chance. So y'all got to see me just do something I've always wanted to do. So we have about 2.5 minutes left. I want you guys to start thinking about questions you might have for C. Liegh. I'm going to ask one more and then holler them out. It's a little dark in there.
I'll ask the first question
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
All right, perfect. Okay, so when you were talking about those ad libs, I'm hearing them in my head, the ones for I Can't Make You Love Me, which is, in my opinion, the best Prince cover ever. And it's part of the reason because of those ad libs. And he says, in this bedroom/church, you can guess the offering. And really that idea that the bedroom and the church are not separate from one another. And that for me takes me to Te amo corazón.
Okay.
Because in Spanish, right, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, there's 2 different words for to love. There's amar, which is, it's love for a human being, but it's also the word you use when you're talking about God's love for yourself.
Right.
So if you tell someone te amo, like there's a very spiritual connotation that does not exist in the other I love you, which is te quiero, which like you could say that to a buddy, right? And so this idea that in just that title, Te amo corazón, like he really does sort of bring in both the physical and the spiritual into that one title. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that song a little bit.
What's great about that song, right? Is that to what you're saying. That song is a song. Somewhat, because we were just discussing Purple Rain today, but that song is a song lyrically. It's about realizing that friendship is better than possession. So if you think about the song Purple Rain, I'm gonna come back to T.O. Comer's Corazon. If you think about Purple Rain, the song is when the kid has overcome his male toxicity, realizes that he can't find light or life through this machismo that's been handed down to him. And so that's why he says, right, in the song, right, like, I can be your friend, right? That being your friend is better than trying to possess you. So when we get to the Te amo corazón, right, it's a realization, right? It's that other whole realization that the best thing about the relationship is not the sex. In fact, let's reverse it. We tend to think, well, not we, because I think all of us are smarter than that. Hollywood tells us that the best sex is being had by 2 young people with great bodies, right? That those are the people having the best sex. My argument is that ain't the best sex, because now one of them know what the hell they doing, right? Let's be clear. And not only do they not know what they doing, they don't know themselves. They don't know themselves physically, they don't know themselves emotionally, they don't know themselves spiritually. The best sex is being had by 2 grown people who know themselves, who've been through something, who know what they like, but also know that love is in giving, not taking. The best love, the best sex, the best orgasm is when you can please somebody else. That's what Te amo corazón is about. It is about that realization that to truly love someone is to be in a spiritual union with them. And if I'm in a spiritual union with them, right, I'll end on this way. I used to tell my college students, what's wrong with dating and courting is that most people go on a date thinking, this better be a good date. I better have a good time. I hope something good happens. When the opposite is what should be true. We rarely are the person that goes on a date saying, I'm gonna do whatever I can to make sure this person has a wonderful time. I'm gonna do whatever I can because I know if this person has a wonderful time, it'll be a wonderful time for me. And that's that spiritual connection and that revelation. And that's why I like that song, because when you hear his delivery, it's like, oh yeah. This is why this is important. Thank you, because I hadn't really thought about that song in a minute. That's what that song is about. It's about that spiritual connection through giving rather than receiving. That's it.
Thank you.
Let's give a Can we give
And
him-
on that note, Rachel has the first question.
Yes, before we start, let's give him a resounding applause, please. It's been a really kind of unbelievable, lovely week here. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit more about Prince, his blackness.
His
Blackness.
Okay, his black.
Blackity black.
There you go.
So a lot of people thought that he was mixed race. He issued a lie and said he was mixed race. He didn't want to be classified as a black artist. We know his reasons, but there were many different things about him being black. But what I loved is in the beginning of the masterclass, you talked about the black community and his family and his adopted family who nourished him and nurtured him along the way, and that he was definitely a black man, always first.
Thank you. So since Prince died, the interesting thing that has happened is a lot of the media has attempted to make Prince an alien and not a black man from a black community. And so I was really intentional in starting the class discussing two people that we call the godmother and godfather of the Minneapolis Sound. One is Bernadette Anderson. Bernadette Anderson was the mother of Prince's childhood best friend, Andre Anderson, who would go on to become Andre Simone, who was the first bass player in Prince's band. In fact, they were in a band called Grand Central together when they were much younger before Prince got his record deal. And so Bernadette Anderson was the community social worker before she went to college and became a social worker. So if a girl was pregnant and she needed somewhere to go or she needed something, Bernadette Anderson did it. If a family was out of their home and they needed food, Bernadette Anderson was the person to do it. And so when Prince's parents divorced and he's not able to get along with his parents, Bernadette Anderson says, sure, come live with me. And by the way, there's already 8 people living in that household. I'm always amazed that it's the people with 8, 9 children that's willing to take on even more. And so what Prince gets from Bernadette Anderson that is the through line in all of his lyrics, right, is this love for community, this need to take care of people. And so in 1992, on the Love Symbol album, in The Sacrifice of Victor, he shouts her out. Bernadette the lady, she told me, whatever you do, son, a little discipline is all you need. Bernadette Anderson is the reason Prince actually graduated high school early, because she knew he and his son were serious about music, so she made a deal. If you go to school an hour early, I will let you go across town to another school that has a better music program. So she was there pouring into him all of those things. She was the reason why after the riots and they burned down that side of town, they got a new community center called The Way. And also they had the YWCA. Bernadette Anderson was the community activist who had those things created. And The Way was where Prince would go as a child and woodshed and learn how to be a musician, right? So that's Bernadette Anderson. The other person is somebody we just lost this year. I actually lost him about a month or so ago. Pepe Willie. Pepe Willie is the person who taught Prince how to write songs. Pepe Willie, his uncle was in a group called Lil Anthony and Imperial. So Pepe Willie grew up in New York, and he married a lady from Minneapolis and moved to Minneapolis. That must be an awful good woman to make you leave New York and go to Minneapolis. I'm telling you. So, and she says, hey, I got a cousin. Why don't you come check out his band? Y'all know how that all go. Somebody tell you they got a cousin, they're really good. And people like, yeah, that's all right. I don't really want to go see your little cousin and his terrible band, right? But Pepe says he goes. And he's like, oh my God. Because he didn't know the history of the black musicians and those people there, that Prince and Andre's father actually played in a band together, and they didn't know it until Andre was over Prince's house. And he said, hey, why my daddy picture on your daddy wall? And Prince's daddy comes in, takes one look at his son's new friend and go, damn, you Fred Anderson, boy? So all those things are like working together. So Pepe taught Prince how to write songs. Pepe was the first person to take Prince into a studio. The very first time, so if you want it online, you can find it's called Minneapolis Genius, right? It's a collection album called Minneapolis Genius. It was the first time Prince was on a record. Prince wrote on that. Pepe taught him how to be a band leader, taught him how to write songs, taught him how to organize himself. By the time Pepe meets Chris Moon and Orrin Husney, who Orrin Husney becomes Prince's first manager, local manager, Prince could already work an engineering board. Prince could already create his own. In fact, Prince had created his own demo, which is what made Orrin Husney. So it's these two black people. And then from 1978 to 1982, all of Prince's promo tours were at black radio, and the audiences were 90 to 75% black. Prince does not have a crossover hit until 1982-83, when Lil Red Corvette is the second single from 1999, gets played on gets played on MTV. Side note, most of y'all not old enough to know this or just didn't know this. MTV had a policy when it first started, it didn't play black music.
That part.
They refused to play black music, and what happened is an Epic record executive basically said, if you don't play Billie Jean, you will never get a video from any of our other artists. Now, Epic, to be slick, to want to make it look like they weren't caving to that, the first artist they played was Billy Ocean. By the way, we sleep on how popular Billy Ocean was back in the day. That dude was awesome. So Billy Ocean, Michael Jackson, Prince become the first three black acts. And it isn't until Lil Red Corvette gets played on MTV that Prince has that's the first time a song by Prince. 1999 was the first single, charted higher on the black charts. So Prince, a product of Black Minneapolis, a product of Bernadette Anderson, a product of Pepe Willie, a product of all those black musicians, a product of his father and those jazz musicians that he would pay homage to starting in '86. So Prince's blackness stayed with him. So it was no mistake when Prince goes to the Grammys in either 2014 or 15, and he gets on that stage and he's announcing the nominees for Album of the Year, and he says, albums. Remember those? Albums like Black Lives Still Matter. And when he did that, there's an article wrote the night Prince broke the internet, because people were so surprised, because for years they had been trying to take Prince out of the black community. And so when Prince makes the declaration on his first album, Don't Make Me Black, he wasn't running from his blackness. What he knew was record companies actually had divisions called the black department. Mm-hmm. If you were a black artist, you were signed to the black department. Didn't matter what you were playing. So you take a song like I'm Yours, which is a stone cold rock groove. Right. You get it to the people who work in the black department, what they gonna do with it? Mm-hmm. They don't have a relationship with rock radio. Oh, by the way, from 1978 until 1989, a black artist was not in high rotation in rock radio and did not appear in a Billboard's rock chart. There was a 13-year period. So we go from Little Richard and Chuck Berry helping, and by the way, the very first rock and roll song is Rocket 88, Ike Turner. I know he's not a good person, but we have to, Little Richard said that basically if there's no Rocket 88, there's no Little Richard. So you got Rocket 88, you got Little Richard, you got Chuck Berry, 1953. By the time you get to 1978, no black artist on the Billboards, rock charts, no black artist gets played on rock radio until 1989, Living Color and Lenny Kravitz. Prince is seeing this, and Prince understands that if they think I'm black, if they treat me like a black artist, so what Prince was saying, don't pigeonhole me. So he started lying about his race. Unfortunately, I talk about this in my book, and I couldn't understand. This was when I realized as a child that adults are stupid, because he couldn't even keep the lie straight. He has 3 interviews.
Right.
What is it, February, March, April. Mm-hmm. In February, one parent is black. I think in February, daddy black, mama mixed. In March, mama black, daddy mixed. In April, they both all mixed up. The journalist wasn't looking at this like, hey, he couldn't even keep the lie straight. Mm-hmm. but he was perpetuating the lie because he understood as long as they treat me like a black artist, they're gonna say I can't even play the music that my community. And so that caused a lot of backlash. There were a lot of black people who weren't cool with that. A lot of black people that didn't know what was going on. We eventually all got past that. But Prince was always true. And I'll say this to the end of that question. Let's Go Crazy single is released on the Purple Rain album. It is the greatest masterclass on black music because the B-side to Let's Go Crazy is Erotic City. Why is that a masterclass? Let's Go Crazy is Little Richard, Erotic City is Parliament Funkadelic. Prince was always teaching. And to release an A and B side, one that's rooted in Little Richard, one that's rooted in Parliament Funkadelic, Prince is challenging what we think a black artist can be and what music should be played by a black artist on radio. I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Well now.
Question?
Okay, I'm sure we have some other questions here. Oh, well, look, we got a question. 1 second. I'm gonna give you a microphone, Sean. Coming.
So real quick, while she's bringing that to Sean, is that how Prince ended up uncredited on an Imperials album? Was from Pepe bringing him to the studio
Yep.
real quick?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And now this guy has a question.
Yeah.
1996 graduate of Tougaloo College
Woo!
here.
The Lou!
Tougaloo Eagle
The
Queen.
Lou!
We love thee.
There we go.
Jerry Ward, Dr. Ward was a professor of mine, 1992, 93, before he left coming to teach at Dillard.
Yep.
But my question has to do with Prince being Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we know Michael Jackson was also Jehovah's Witness. And tenants, people who follow that belief system often assume political neutrality. Yet in Prince's lyrics, we find that those lyrics are anything but neutral politically. So I'm wondering if you have ever done any research into Prince as a politician, artist, and if you deal with that in any aspect in the book.
Yeah, in fact, there's a whole chapter on the Rainbow Children. The Rainbow Children is Prince's Jehovah's Witness album, right? It's also the example that Prince couldn't be a pure anything. So yes, Jehovah's Witnesses don't vote. They stay out of politics. And when Prince gets converted, and actually Prince is converted by Larry Graham, and I actually had a conversation with Prince. I wanted to know what made you convert. Prince was raised a Seventh-day Adventist. So if you know anything about being a Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah's Witnesses actually grow out of the Seventh-day Adventist. For me, there's no greater argument than to see Seventh-day Adventists debate Jehovah's Witness. I love that just because I'm a petty person, right? So Larry Graham bringing the Jehovah's Witness faith to Prince wasn't that foreign because Prince was raised a Seventh-day Adventist. When Prince first converts to being a Jehovah's Witness, he's going down the party lines. Yes, I don't vote, right? So Prince says, yes, we don't put our faith in nobles, right? So voting, what is voting gonna do? At the same time, on the Musicology album, he releases a song called Dear Mr. Man, which is one of his most politically charged songs that he'd ever written. The Rainbow Children, he starts off like, okay, yeah, this is my Jehovah's Witness album. It starts off his Jehovah's Witness album. Then you get the Family Name. Family Name is essentially a song about how can we be Christians and not address the horrors of colonialism and slavery. Mm-hmm. So Prince was always kind of doing this dance, this duality. And so even in becoming a Jehovah's Witness, and I want to be clear, like we all, he wanted to be a good witness. He wanted to toe the party line. But there was also something in him from Bernadette Anderson, right? That seed that Bernadette Anderson had placed. That seed that James Brown said loud, I'm black and I'm proud. That seed that George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic, Chocolate City. We love you, Chocolate City, and your vanilla suburbs, right? Prince could never, the Staple Singers, right? Prince being a fan and a child and signing Mavis Staples later to his. So while Prince attempted to walk the party line of being a Jehovah's Witness, the actual proof is that his Jehovah's Witness album is probably also one of his most politicized albums. The song I quoted, The Work, about going out. Now, it's a Jehovah's Witness, right? Going door to door to do the work. So that's the Jehovah's Witness premise. Mm-hmm. But underneath the work he's actually talking about doing is political work.
Right.
Because he could never completely separate himself from being a social political artist. Because for Prince, God was always the answer. If you go back to the Controversy album, I'm glad you asked this question because I get to say this. When the Rainbow Children album came out, Prince lost a lot of white fans and he lost a lot of fans who just weren't orthodox in any kind of religion. They were upset and they started using the term Prince is judgy Prince. And Prince, I'm like, Prince didn't just become judgy. Read the Controversy, listen to the Controversy album. That's a judgy dude. It's just that now he judging something else, but he the same dude. Anti-Christian, right? The song Anti-Christian is a metaphor for the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. On that song, Prince is saying the bad physical things that exist is because we are not right spiritually. Stop focusing on the symptom and focus on the virus. So I tell people, if you were shocked by the Rainbow Children, that's because you wasn't listening in 81. And so Prince coming to the Rainbow Children and the Jehovah's Witness faith was simply just, I would say, an accumulation of where he was always headed, yet he was going to be a Jehovah's Witness his way in the same way he did everything else. I hope that answers the question. Thank you for that.
I see a hand in the back over there. Rachel, can you take the mic over to?
I'm bringing it, going as fast as I can.
And I apologize for these extremely long answers. I know I'm...
So first off, I want to say thank you for being here. You're both terrific, prolific, deep thinkers, and I appreciate your awareness of knowledge as well as the application of that and helping teach others about it.
Thank you.
Former teacher, first responder. My question for you two is, who was your first mirror of how to change your character before Prince?
Wait a minute, say that again, I couldn't hear you.
Who was your first mirror of how to change your character before Prince? For both of you.
I'm
Your first
Sorry, I'm from Chicago.
No, I'm sorry.
Like, who was their first, reflection in their mirror of how to change their character? Mirror.
Mirror?
Mirror.
Let me see, I'm gonna try this.
Who was your first
I'm gonna do it with a Southern accent and see if y'all can handle it, okay? All right. Who is your first mirror character that showed you a reflection of how to change your character first?
Oh.
For both of you.
Do you mean musically or just in general?
Who was the first person in your life that helped you change the most before Prince even became
Okay. I'll let you answer then. I'll
Got
answer.
it, got it. Okay.
Oh, okay. The first person in your life who helped you change the most, sort of showed you the way, that kind of thing? Before Prince. I mean, so I was born in 81, so Prince has always been there. There was never a BP time before me, no before Prince. But if I had to say someone other than Prince and other than my mother,
Right.
I'm actually going to say my 10th grade English teacher. I gave her a paper in 10th grade on To Kill a Mockingbird. And I had it until Katrina, and then Katrina took it from me. But I had the response back, and she wrote on the top of it, she said, "I'm not smart enough to teach you, but I'm smart enough to tell you to get the hell out of this town." And she underlined hell twice. Because I grew up in rural Alabama. And I remember reading that and being like, this is the first person who's ever seen me.
Wow.
And so that's the person that was the mirror. My kids call her grandma.
There you go. Shout out to all the great teachers. Actually, I'm actually working on a collection of short stories, and a lot of this new collection of short stories are going to be around my parents and other older people. It would be my parents. My father was so active in the movement in high school that a sheriff came to my grandfather's house and said, hey, if this little red nigga is here too much longer, he gonna be real familiar with a tree. So my grandfather put my father in the military because Vietnam was safer than Mississippi at the time. My father gets out, he comes back, enrolls at Jackson State. He's at Jackson State in 1970 when the National Guard and the Jackson Police and the Mississippi Highway Patrol shoot up Jackson State the same week as Kent State, killing 2 students, wounding 18. My father creates the vet club. They patrol the street to make sure that the white patrons driving through the campus, because there had been 3 students who had been struck by cars. I'm saying all that to say that probably the biggest influence on my life outside of Prince and the other artistic mentors I've had have been my mother and my father for 2 really different reasons. But I will say that my mother and my father were something that I never was able to accomplish. They were the most scientifically empirical people and the most faith-based people that I'd ever met in my life, that those 2 things didn't contradict. Like their need to be empirically sound did not in any way impact their deep faith. And their deep faith, for whatever reason, never quelled their being curious and being scientific. And so they were, for me, the person to help me see who I could be in very different ways. Now, my mother was much more strictly religious. For years, my mother would call Prince that little narrow booty pervert. Like that was her name. She would call him that little narrow. Because people would say Prince was fine, but my mama was a country woman who liked country men. So if you were skinny, you just weren't gonna be fine to my mama, right? There you go, Claudette, that's right. Claudette did not like no narrow booty man, right? You had to be a John Henry to get Claudette to look around. And my father, to my mother's dismay, I won't tell the whole story, but and my father used to always say, you're telling the story wrong, boy. And I used to say, if I tell it right, you're gonna look even worse in the story. Let me tell it. My father accidentally, at 10 years old, took me to see Prince open for Rick James. So I, at 10 years old, saw Prince open for Rick James. There's a whole other story around that, but my father was the person who gave me art, and gave me art as something that sustains culture, moves culture, and helps people to resist. He was the person who let me know how important art was. On the other hand, my mother was a teacher who thought absolutely nothing of perfect attendance. She will pull me out of school to take me to a play or to an opera. I lived in Clarksville, Mississippi. So she would take me to Memphis to go to something. She would take me down to Jackson to go something. Mm-hmm. Claudette didn't care anything about, in fact, I remember being 7th to 8th grade being mad, I never got a perfect attendance certificate. I remember saying it, and she's like, and you turned out pretty fine without it, didn't you, boy? So I would say those 2 people, my mother and my father, they were the mirror that was both the blueprint for me and also helped me become the person that I could become. That's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Janice, do you have a question? No? No? Okay. Okay, sure. Hold on. Do you need me to translate that?
Yeah, no, we heard it. So here's what's really crazy. I get a lot of flack for not performing my poems. I got really known for reading my poetry from 96 to 2000. That's because I got dragged kicking and screaming to the stage by some of my friends and mentors. So the podcast is simply because at the heart of hearts, I'm a writer. I write poems, I write short stories, I write cultural criticism. I've always gotten more from people reading my work than people hearing me perform it. And I'm not knocking the performer. Because I come from a line of great performers. And I don't mind saying that, if I'm on my game, I'm a pretty good poetry performer. I don't have a problem saying that. It's just that for whatever reason, when I write, I'm writing to be read. And so I do one podcast, it's not mine, but every Saturday there's a podcast called What Did Prince Do This Week? And so I've become a regular guest on that. I didn't start out as a regular guest on that because that's where a lot of the Prince scholars kind of hang out and commune. It's a podcast by D'Angela Duff. She's a professor at NYU, and every year she has a Prince symposium at NYU. So I've been presenting at that symposium now for 4 or 5 years. So that's the only podcast that I would do. The memoir, this next collection of short stories will probably be the closest thing that you get from me as a memoir. And it's because my first collection of short stories are all serious except one really funny story. And I only say it's one really funny story because all the people who know me, it's a real funny story. So people who know me, when they got that first collection of short stories, they were all mad. Like, the hell's up with all these serious, damn depressing stories? What all the funny stories about your mom beating you from coming in for curfew laden, all this stuff. So the collection of short stories on which I'm working now, it's about, the overriding theme is how do you raise a healthy whole being? How do you raise a child into a healthy whole being? Mm-hmm. Underneath, I'm paying respect to my mother and father and all the people in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and Jackson who helped raise me. So that'll be the closest. The problem is, and I'm doing it purposely, I'm going to be blurring the lines of fiction and reality. Right now, the working title is The Strange Fictional Fantastic Adventures, Completely Unrealistic Adventures of Clyde. So, and by the way, the C, my name is actually C. The C doesn't stand for anything. So I know a lot of people think that it's gone Clyde. Clyde is because if you grew up in the 70s, I'm going to do a little check, see how old people are. How many people remember the basketball player Walt Clyde Frazier? So Clyde was a nickname for being cool and for being stylish, right? And Clyde the Glide, there we go. And so the reason it's Clyde, cause it's the stories about a young kid who thought he was cool but really wasn't, right? So I wanted to be a Clyde, I just didn't have the game to be a Clyde. Hence, I kept getting into trouble. And so that'll be the closest that I'll write about a memoir. But thank you for that question, appreciate it.
Okay, 1 second.
Any last questions?
I think she's moving to one, there we go.
All right, cool, because I can't see over there.
These lights got up. Where were you on the night of the 15th, right?
Right?
I don't really have a question, just a feeling. You stated that you had saw Prince open up for Rick James and you was 10 years old. And I was like, oh God, how old was I? But I saw that same show. And, yeah.
Hey, you weren't the girl that fainted next to me, were you?
No, it was actually on the north side of Chicago.
Okay.
1980. Anyway, I'm telling too much my age, right? My next scene was that when I saw Prince for the first time on Dick Clark.
Yep, American Bandstand.
It was an eye-opening because it was something that, Prince, we all share it all. We all love Prince and we all attribute something to our heart, whatever fashion that he touched us. But I remember him saying, Dick Clark said, how many instruments you play? And Prince said, about 1,000. I said, oh my God. It was just mind-boggling. And, I truly miss Prince. And Prince, he touched us all. And I just want to know, what's your thought on Sometimes It Snows in April?
One of the most beautiful songs ever written. It's another example that Prince was a poet and a storyteller. Goes wonderfully with the movie. We don't have enough time to talk about why Under the Cherry Moon is a much better movie than people think it is, but that's a whole nother discussion. I will say this about Sometimes It Snows in April, and I'll say this collectively, because I'll come to answer your question, but I will say this. So Around the World in a Day and Parade are the two albums when I stopped listening to Prince songs. I never have a desire to listen to a Prince song. I have to listen to a Prince album. Mm-hmm. I listen to Prince. To me, listening to a Prince song is like reading just a chapter from an album. Mm-hmm. And so Sometimes It Snows in April it is the perfect denouement, right? So the denouement is the falling action of the story after the climax. It is, Under the Cherry Moon, the movie, continues Prince's theme from Purple Rain, though it's a completely different movie and a completely different genre. It continues the theme. Remember, Christopher says, when two are in love, that's the ultimate. The flesh is nothing. We live in a parade. And the parade for him was about a spiritual evolution. So Sometimes It Snows in April is about not just loving the people that you have with you, because we never know the hour of the moment or the day, right? We never know, right? So we want to love on somebody because they may not be here the next day. But it's also knowing that for Prince, he was a spiritual being having a physical experience. Mm-hmm. And being a spiritual being having a physical experience, for him, he was going to go somewhere else and have another spiritual. And that we have to be able, if we truly want to ascend and evolve as people, to be able to learn people, love people beyond the physical, right? Because part of what's happening in that movie, right, it's a movie about these two gigolos, right, trying to shake down women for money, and then you have this class thing where, of course, the white daddy, doesn't like his daughter hanging out with these black dudes, so he wants to knock them off, and then you have that whole thing, and then you have this white girl, rich white girl, this poor black dude, and they're trying to develop this relationship, right? And Christopher is older, so he's jaded, right? He's a gigolo. He doesn't really believe in love. And so he finds this younger person who teaches him how to believe in love, and it's that moment that he learns to believe in love that he becomes free from the physical. So Sometimes It Snows in April is saying, look, these unique things will often happen in our life, and we have to learn to find the beauty of them even if we don't see the beauty of them. Like an April snow, it's inconvenient, it's a whatever moment, but an April snow can also be very beautiful because it's one of those rare, and remember what he says that those kind of cars don't pass you every day. Just like it doesn't snow in April every day, everybody in this room has a friend or a relative that's a rare, unique, beautiful creature, but we take them for granted. Stop taking the people in your life that you love, stop taking them for granted, because those cars don't pass you every day. And what happens is, when that person dies, we all feel aggrieved because we have that one regret. We didn't spend the time, or we didn't tell them we loved them, or we didn't appreciate them. So Sometimes It Snows in April is telling us, appreciate the people that's in your life, love them as long and as hard as you can, while also preparing to go and have another experience somewhere else. That's it. Thank you for that question.
Do we have any other questions? You know what? I believe in silver linings. And so Ellen Morris Pruitt is an author, and she leads we have a free community writing workshop here every second Saturday. And Ellen leads the community writing. And she said, I have a friend, C Liegh, and he wants to talk to you about something. And oh my God. Well, first, all he had to do was say Prince, and then I was interested. But it's just been a full-blown, amazing week so far, and it's not even over yet. And then Casey's daughter falls, and I'm like, And then I called Dr. Megan Holt, who happens to have C. Leigh's book by her bedside as a Bible, and she could come, and she's amazing. And so it's just been so wonderful. But I really want to give a hand to the parent that's here who bring your kid to a camp like this.
Yeah.
Really, I think you're the only parent here tonight of the kids that are coming. But it's like, I'm glad you see it, not just because you love Prince or whatever, but to broaden your mind, Lydia, and to have something else to think about, other than what you already know. You're learning something deeper, and we're learning about somebody we love, but we didn't know as deeply as we do now. But real big applause to y'all for doing that. I appreciate it. And Thank you both very much, very much. Pastor Christiane Books is over here. They have Casey's books. We've bought a couple, some beautiful books. And then we also have C Leigh's books, and he's going to be signing it. So do y'all have any final words?
You want to play a 10-question lightning round?
Yeah, let's do that. Do it quickly.
All right, we're going to end with a 10-question lightning round. Knee-jerk reaction, no explanation, C Liegh.
Okay. I hate these, but okay.
Yep. Favorite Prince song?
I don't have one.
Favorite Prince album?
Don't have one.
Most underrated Prince song?
Colonize Mine.
Least favorite Prince song?
Anything off of the Hit and Run Part 1 album.
Collaboration you wish had happened?
B.B. King. In fact, B.B. King actually said, I want to work with Prince.
Favorite Prince protege act?
The Time.
Favorite cover of a Prince song?
D'Angelo's She's Always in My Hair.
Yes or no, is Sheila E. Prince's protege?
Oh, that's a damn good question.
I know.
Yes.
Favorite Prince alter ego?
Jamie Starr.
Favorite Prince B-side?
We just had this debate. For personal reasons, hello.
All right, and while I have 15 more questions, that's all the time we have tonight. So
Thank
y'all go
y'all.
buy C. Leigh's book and let's continue this conversation over some drinks. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Those are great. Those were great. Thank you for those.
Thank you. Okay, not horrible for 72 hours prep.
Hey, no.